Welcome to Pesto Comics Audio Edition. This is the entry for February 26th, 2024. Selling without spoiling. But what if the spoiler is the best part? Welcome back. It's been an interesting week as I've launched from Parts Unknown number 2, and it is doing pretty well, completely out of context. With Naked Kaiju Woman being an all-time unicorn of a campaign for Pesto Comics and how well it has done, the return to form feels a little bit disappointing. I know I should feel good about it. I know we're well on track to getting this thing funded, and if this pace continues, it should surpass what the first issue of From Parts Unknown did. That said, it's a little bit disappointing not to have that constant flurry of backers and new backers. What's been most interesting about this campaign is that a lot of the backers that I've been seeing are returning backers. I'm going to choose to look at the positive side of this. If there's a lot of returning backers, that must mean that I'm doing something right. People who've actually read and experienced the book like it enough that they're coming back and pledging once more. There's clearly something I have to work on in the marketing in order to get more new backers involved. One thing I know for sure that's happening is I'm not seeing From Parts Unknown popping up in the emails from other creators, which was something that was happening constantly with Naked Kaiju Woman. Every time I would get an update for a campaign that I've backed, I would see Naked Kaiju Woman in one of those 3 other campaigns you should back. That's not happening at all this time around, so that seems to be the big problem. So I'm going to be looking at how these things are released in the future. Maybe there's a little bit of rethinking that has to be done, but I want to make sure this series is an absolute success. In order to do that, if there's 1 or 2 things I need to change to just get it over that line to make sure that we're getting people's attention right off the bat and getting a lot of new people supporting the campaign, I'll have to figure out what that is and see if I can adjust on the fly. One new thing I've tried this time is letting the cat out of the bag, telling people exactly what this book is. Hey, guys, guess what? This isn't just a wrestling book, it's a vampire wrestling book. I was really hoping that would get people in the door. But again, there's still lots of time and still some different kind of advertising tactics and things I could do to get some new eyes on this series. All that said, I'll skip the project updates this week as my intro is more or less a project update, and we'll get right into the main story. Captain America, not quite brave or new. Everyone has different theories on why Captain America Brave New World isn't doing nearly as well as the previous MCU or Captain America entries. Is it superhero fatigue? Is it Anthony Mackie? Is it the politics that were either too soft or too hard? Is it that audiences only like the OG Avengers and aren't into this new generation? Were there too many writers on this movie and it lacked focus? I think all of these are varying degrees of true, but there's one thing that absolutely breaks this film for me more than any other: the marketing. I'll be upfront about it. Captain America Brave New World is mostly forgettable. It's a serviceable film. It's fine. There's nothing incredible about it, except for one big red part. The problem is, the entire film is structured as though Red Hulk is going to be a surprise. Seeds are planted with Thaddeus Ross and his anger issues from the moment we set eyes on him. You see the rage building inside. His eyes glow red, and his veins begin to bulge. And all you can think is, cool, they're going to show me what I saw in the trailer, or the poster, or the pre-show ads. But no, you don't get to see Red Hulk until the climax of the film. I don't even think it's a bad thing. If it was a surprise, it would be an epic payoff. If it was something that they would hint towards, and as a Marvel Comics fan, your knowledge of the lore is paid off when Red Hulk erupts, or if you're a casual fan and have no idea that Red Hulk was even a thing, it would be such an amazing surprise that you'd have more questions than answers. Basically, what the MCU is built off of. However, the marketing team behind this film had zero faith that they could sell it without promising some Red Hulk. And as you're walking into the theater, there's a poster that's showing more of Red Hulk than it is Captain America. This takes most of the joy out of the film. Spider-Man and the multiverse of spoilers. Spoilers get out all the time. It's just the fact of going to the movies in the age of social media. Spider-Man No Way Home was a film built entirely on surprises. It had a bunch of spoilers leaked, and yet it still managed to delight audiences. Anyone who knew anything about the movie had a good feeling that Andrew Garfield was going to be in it in some form. There were also rumors that Tobey Maguire might make an appearance. Due to those spoilers, nothing was a true surprise, but it wasn't confirmed by the studio itself as you were walking into the theater. It's a big difference. there's still a seed of doubt. There's still a belief that maybe the internet could be wrong. Maybe it was Photoshop or out of context photos or a set visit. Who knows? That first moment when Andrew Garfield's Amazing Spider-Man walks through the portal, the level of excitement that you feel as a longtime fan of not just Marvel movies, but Spider-Man in any format, is absolutely paid off. Most importantly, you get to experience the joy for yourself. These weren't just one-off cameos. They were actually a part of the story. Unlike Bucky's stitched-on appearance in Captain America: Brave New World, this was the only time I heard a gasp of excitement the entire screening. These other Spider-Men built on the lore of Spider-Man, acting as the Uncle Ben character for the Tom Holland Spider-Man. Each gets their moment in the sun. Each gets their redemption in their own arcs from their original series. It was expertly done. It would have been completely muted if it were just spoiled on your way in. That said, I think there's enough to build on that the interactions between the Spider-Men is earned and builds towards something. Other films rely entirely on the surprises, like the MCU's latest entry before Captain America: Brave New World. Deadpool, Wolverine, and the Fox Marvel players. If any of Deadpool and Wolverine were spoiled ahead of time, it absolutely does not work. Most of the jokes are just Family Guy-style appearances of characters from previous Fox films, and big nods to comics lore. There's also a whole bunch of insider jokes that are exclusively for those that have been following the saga of how Deadpool was made, casting decisions that didn't quite go as planned, and jokes for people who read Variety and The Hollywood Reporter regularly. So, me. If it wasn't for some pretty wild action scenes, there wouldn't be too much for Deadpool and Wolverine to go on. Imagine if the poster was chock full of spoilers, or the trailer gave away everything up front. Every comic reference, every returning character or big moment. Deadpool and Wolverine is an event film. The marketing team understood that this time, thankfully. Even with the leaks of Hugh Jackman wearing the comics-accurate Wolverine costume, they still didn't give it away in the marketing. It allowed for the climax where Hugh Jackman's Wolverine puts on the mask that we've been waiting for 2 decades. It's pure fan service, and it understands that. It does it the right way. Most importantly, all 3 of these films have a path to leverage. What happens when you're releasing something entirely new as a small indie creator, and you don't want to spoil the surprise? A big uphill battle. Selling from Parts Unknown #1 was a real challenge. I didn't want to spoil the ending of the first issue. It doesn't work as a single issue experience if the final page is spoiled. My hope is that we get a big return rate, as readers want to see the payoff after the cliffhanger in the first issue. It seems to be going in the right direction, with an overwhelming majority of backers being returning backers. I could be entirely wrong about this. It could be that people don't care at all whether or not the surprise was spoiled, and they just want to know what type of book they're getting into. Even more risky is if they were expecting a regular wrestling book, and then they see the direction we're pulling things in. Maybe they're disappointed and don't want to jump on the next issue. Who knows? I think with indie books especially, the element of surprise is the one thing we have in our favor. It's harder to get people in the door, but those that are brave enough are rewarded for it. With issue 2, I've let that cat out of the bag, though not entirely. From Parts Unknown is a story of pro wrestling and vampires. Who the vampires are, what they do, and why they do it is the reason to pick up the book. Trading on your reputation. I will say I felt a lot more comfortable being vague with this being my 5th and 7th campaign than I would have at the beginning of my crowdfunding career. If this was Unlimited Udo and I was being so vague and generic with what the book was about, I don't think it would have done anywhere close to as well as it had. I needed to convince people that I had a unique and interesting story to tell. I get a good sense that people know what they can expect from me story-wise, but also that I can deliver books as promised. That's just me as a small indie creator, though I've teamed up with a number of excellent folks through the years too. Marvel, as a multi-conglomerate studio, could do this too. Even if they haven't quite been delivering their best as of late, they could still have sold us on a movie that's Captain America with the Falcon taking the mantle, just like he did in the miniseries that many enjoyed. That would have got people through the door. Instead, they completely panicked. They wasted their reputation. The film suffers because of it. So does the franchise of the MCU. This is another misstep in a long line of recent missteps. I don't think the MCU is going anywhere. I think Thunderbolts is probably going to be a return to form. By the time we get to Avengers Secret Wars, I'm sure the MCU will start getting closer to that pinnacle they once were at. They'll never come close to the glory days of Avengers Endgame, but they can still trend in that direction. They just need to be able to trust themselves and audiences to do so. Until next time. Coming up on the Substack, March 5th, Fun with Fulfillment, Big Smoke Pulp Volume 1, Part 2 of the Big Smoke Pulp Volume 1 Postmortem. March 12th, Schedule Congestion, having so much to release and not enough weeks to do it. And March 19th, Con Journal, Toronto Comic Con, visiting the first con of 2025 as a fan. And upcoming appearances. So by the time this goes live, I should know whether I landed a table at TCAF or not. Either way, I will be going, whether I'm tabling or attending. So it'll be a lot of fun in the Mattamy Athletic Center. I play hockey there every once in a while, so it'll be cool to be selling comics or just picking up some comics in the same space. It'll be pretty different, interesting. So here's hoping that I land a table, but if not, I'll be there either way. It'll be a lot of fun. And then there's Fan Expo Canada. That's the big one here in Toronto. We'll see if I land a table. I'm always kind of half-half about this one because the best part of Fan Expo is actually being able to go to all the panels and go around the floor. It'll be a interesting thing either way, whether there's a table or not. Ideally, what I also have done is I've applied to host a panel there, doing my usual talking about Kickstarter and that whole business. But what I'm also hoping to do is a episode of the Instant Ink comic book podcast with Roberto. If all goes well, we get to do a kind of truncated miniature version of that with people live. That'll be a lot of fun. So here's hoping we get to do that. We're going to apply to do that at a couple other places as well. So hopefully Fan Expo is smart enough to take us on before we start doing it all over the place. So those are the two that I've already put in applications for. Two more that I am now targeting is Montreal Comic Con. That is the first weekend of July 4th through 6th. And Ottawa Comic Con. That's September 5th through 7th. So if everything goes well, I'll be tabling at those as well. And that might be all of the cons that I target this year. If there's smaller ones around the Toronto area, I may end up there, but these are my primary targets as far as the bigger shows go. So hopefully you can catch me there if you're anywhere in that part of Canada. It'd be a lot of fun. And then in terms of what I'm attending, I'll be at Toronto Comic Con on the Sunday. I'll be checking that out. I'm using my Fan Expo pass from the year prior to get in the door, so that limits me to one day. So the day I am picking is the Sunday. Seems to be a bit more chill, and people are a little more willing to chat as the weekends come and gone. So it'll be a lot more fun to visit then and see people. And also pick up some deals from the vendors as they're getting rid of their dollar comics. So I'll be happy to dig through some piles while I'm there. And then there's the Toronto Indie Author Conference. So I have a lot of fun. I talk about this event all the time. There's only been one edition, and I had such a great time that I can't wait for the next one. So I'm really looking forward to this event and getting to hang out with people at the Toronto Indie Author Conference in the Toronto Reference Library. And then the big one I'm going to this year is New York Comic Con. Again, we'll see once tickets are out there and that, and if I land these said tickets. So it's still pending. I don't have anything in hand, so I'm reticent to say that I'm 100% going, but it's very much on my list. I would like to go. I am planning to go, and hopefully I'll see you there. And the Pesto Comics release calendar. So, believe it or not, this has been flux. I mentioned it off the top that I'm rethinking a little bit of how I want to release things. If you do look at the calendar, there's a 2-month gap between From Parts Unknown 4 and 5, and what I'm considering is maybe bringing issue 5 a little closer so that people can get the whole story in their hands. I don't know if it's because I'm selling issue 2 of 5 and folks are just waiting for the whole story or what it is, but I'm hoping that maybe by having the whole storyline, the whole plot, the whole everything out there all at once, that'll give the whole series a little bit of a boost. So if that means moving campaigns or maybe double shipping or doing something like that to make sure that issue 5 gets out sooner than later, then so be it. That's what I'm going to do. So I don't have details on this yet. It's still more or less in the early stages. I got to make sure that Daniel and JP can actually get everything ready for that ending period as well. I don't think it'll be too much of a problem because we're already actively working on issue 5. So it would be great to be able to move that up and then get From Parts Unknown out there before the first half of 2025. I'd feel a lot better about it. So if you're interested, I'm keeping this calendar as up to date as possible, but I've also put a link in there where you can find a spreadsheet, and that's where I'm keeping things super duper up to date. You can see me almost thinking live as I move things around and start playing with what's being released when. I think the release windows are pretty solid in terms of when things will come out, but what is coming out in that window is where things may change. So be sure to check that out as I'm pretty open about when and how things are going to be coming out. So check out the Substack, click that link, find out a lot more. And lastly, we got the Instant Ink Comic Book Podcast this week. We have the second half of our conversation with James Edward Clark. Dude is so much fun. I've actually been way behind on editing, so it's still very fresh in my mind, this conversation with James. And yeah, it was a lot more fun than I even remembered. James has a lot to say about all kinds of things. He's an amazing artist too. He does share a lot of things on camera and even shares some big news about some big projects he has. So I highly recommend checking out the podcast. You can find that on YouTube, Spotify, etc. But you could also find the shorts on YouTube or on our Instagram. So you don't necessarily have to sit there for the full hour-long episode. You'll get most of the updates through the Instagram. But much like I am with this, I'm really good with time codes on the YouTube and that too. So if you want to be able to jump around and just get specific topics within an episode, you can do that as well. So check that out on YouTube and Spotify. And that's it for this week. So like I mentioned off the hop, I've got From Parts Unknown on the brain. It's doing relatively well in terms of just campaigns in general, but it's definitely going to land somewhere in the middle of the pack. It's not doing the best of all the campaigns so far. And I'm a little upset about that, of course, because the bar was set so high with Naked Kaiju Woman, and we're just not even coming close to that same level. Unsurprisingly, people aren't as interested in wrestling as they are naked ladies. Go figure. But all that said, I'm still thinking about ways that I can make this work a little better in the future. But you got to learn and adjust. I still think we're going to fund just fine. It won't take too much. The follower count is constantly growing, which is probably the most key thing out of all of this. The last 48 hours might get a little bit of that surge as people are looking but not necessarily following. I think there's something to be said for the higher goal I set this time out as well. Usually I stick to $1,000. This time I got brave after Naked Kaiju Woman just blew past the goal and did $1,500. So we would have been, as of this recording, about $29 away from funding. And I'm recording this on Friday, so as of this recording, we would be $29 away from funding instead of $529 away from funding. But it is what it is. It's fine. Again, I think that shouldn't be a big deal. We should be able to easily clear that bar, get this book in everyone's hands. And even if we don't, it's a learning experience and we can start over in a different way. But I'd much prefer that at least the people that have put in the effort to actually back this campaign can get a book in their hands. I would rather not have to start over and get these people to reback and do all that business. Let's just get the book out to those. And then I could think of a plan to really reach new audiences in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th issues. So could it be going better? Absolutely. Could it be going worse? Absolutely. So I'm trying to stay positive. I think it'll be really good. The other thing that I have on my mind is I do have a couple of extra projects that are outside of the Kickstarter realm that I'm trying to get done. I have books that are planned for Kindle Unlimited, and they'll be doing a run on there. So I'm talking novellas, prose novellas that'll be available on Kindle Unlimited for anybody that subscribes to that. And I'm going to be doing a bunch of series to basically try and get another arm of this whole Pesto Not Quite Comics thing off the ground and just really make a go of all of this. So again, if you look at that release calendar, you can see I got all kinds of different things planned. And they're all in different stages of production. So I'm really feeling myself falling behind a little bit. But that's okay. I knew this would happen. I'm still relatively organized, and I think I know what to do to get back on top of everything like I need to. But I'd be lying if I didn't say I wasn't feeling it a little bit right now. All said, if you haven't checked out From Parts Unknown, I know I say it every time, but this one truly does need a little bit of your help to get over the line. So if you're one of the followers on the campaign, I really appreciate it. If there's something holding you back from backing it, let me know. I'd love to know what I can do better and what I might be doing wrong here. And if there's anything I can do to convince you otherwise. And if you're not following it and you haven't backed it, please give it a look. At the very least, if you don't want to get the comic, maybe a pin is more your liking, or at the very least, share it out there if you can. Let's get this thing funded so at least I can get the comics out in people's hands. And if you're not interested at all, I won't take any offense to it. I totally get it. That's fine. I appreciate you listening this long and being a fan in some form or fashion. It really does mean a lot. And next week, we'll talk about another campaign that actually did pretty well, which was Big Smoke Pulp Volume 1. And I should finally have the prints in my hand, and I should be putting packages together and all that stuff next week. So I'll have a lot more to share on that. So I hope you'll be back then. I really appreciate you. Thanks for listening. We'll talk again next week. Thanks.